Instagram docuseries The One.
Oh! I just love that the humor still exists in very serious conversations. Sometimes the best way to open up with a very serious conversation is to make people laugh. I think I'm a reactionary creator. I'm trying to get into the practice of not saying I am an artist. I'm a painter. I work in all different mediums: charcoal, pencil, pastel pencil, spray paint, acrylic, oils, but I also sculpt. As far as my journey, it goes way back into the 40s. My father served in the U.S. Army in World War II. Met my mother in Ponce, Puerto Rico. I'm one of 4 siblings, the only one that was born on the island in Ponce, and then brought me back to New York where they were already residing. In Brooklyn first, and then they moved to the Lower East Side, where that whole entry gate was open for many people coming from down south or from the Caribbean. The community was very festive in the Lower East Side at that time. Below Delancey Street, talk about crossing Delancey, was the Lower East Side. That was more infused with a really eclectic group of migrants, sort of rubbing shoulders with the financial district. The people that were there introduced this much more bigger, rounder table for me to try to understand not just my own people, but also other people's struggle. And I saw those bridges of the gap. It's not just the water, but the fact that this structure, these bridges were at our disposal. It all reminded me of that migration, that you can migrate across the river by going over the Manhattan Bridge or over the Williamsburg Bridge or over the 59th Street Bridge, or you want to go further, go down to the Verrazano Bridge, in Staten Island. We could take them as images, visuals of exploration. And I did. At the early age of 8, 9 years old, I was going across the bridge on a bike. Just being able to make that journey made me feel like the nomad that I always will be and am. And it reminded me of the island where I was born, but it wasn't what was feeding my curiosity. My curiosity was Americana, the African-American experience, through the music, through the dance, through the fashion, striking that pose. If you had a good strut, good swag in your walk, your talk was really cool. Here comes this tool that everyone is using, a compressed can, which is an extension of the pencil, but it never touches the surface. I wanted to investigate that and try to extend that tool to lead you to understanding the color palette much better, sense of light, shadow, depth of field. All those things came back from my early drawing days, 5, 6, 7 years old. The irony is later on, the municipalities were like, it went from vandals to graffiti artists. And I was like, well, there's a contradiction. You're calling this sector of young souls something that politically can be used as a tangible way that we're out of control, that the city's out of control. First and foremost, like a little history about that movement. We never called ourselves graffitiists or graffiti artists or graffiti writers. As a collective, we called ourselves writers because we were trying to develop a style and attitude to refiguring out the alphabet and the name. You think about the alphabet, you start from A and you end up at Z, but they're all formulated letters, right? And we use them in different formats. And you think about like when someone underscores something, they're really putting that flag. And there was a pride there. And I identify with that emotion of creating that persona for yourself through the name, whether it's a real name or a made-up name that makes you feel a little bit more lifted. Because placing your name and making placements for it throughout the city is a way of creating a footprint and keeping it permanent. And I'm part of that reaction of picking up the can of paint instead of picking up the habits of a society that doesn't care to cater to the new young voices in the room. I like to think that my moment of arrival as a visionary, as a poet, as a painter, as a sculptor was when I did the Howard the Duck. Because that was out of my comfort zone. That was on a stationary object that was embedded in my neighborhood, and that it was now open for critique, destruction, opposition, all that stuff. I felt very proud when I climbed up on that wall and 20, 30 feet up, whatever it was, and said, oh, I feel that this has now changed the chapter and the course of history. And that's when I was like, let God forgive us all if you can't see. The world has grown up and matured through the lens of art. I can help people that don't understand this connect those dots and start to think, wow, there's something else here that we never saw coming or even in our front step. Back when I was 19, 20 years old, I had been in love with this practicing model that I accustomed myself so much over the years. So now that I'm much older, I can take time to actually think things through. I felt that there was a comfort in the studio practice with the walls and the roof over my head, but my radical self still exists in my work. If I was painting subways now, I would be painting exactly what I'm painting in my paintings now. I think what pushed me into this new series called Apartamento, after so many years, you start to take inventory about like, how did you get here in the first place? So what are those steps? Being one of the last living members of my immediate family, I feel I'm the one, I'm the mensajero. I'm looking back at those times and places and faces and spaces to see how did that galvanize me? Is it sheer luck? Is it determination? Is it calculation? Maybe all of the above. And I'm also embracing the goodness of my family and many familias from that whole diaspora of Puerto Ricans, Cubanos, Mexicanos, Dominicanos. The whole spectrum of the Latin beautiful sphere is through this apartment because there's more love in my mother's apartment than there is in all of my neighborhood. You know, 25 years old was the last train I ever painted. So I knew that I had to now open that door and throw myself through it and approach a whole new different audience that I always cared about, but I didn't know what my dialogue should be. So there may be something in these paintings I do in the future that I feel will probably inform that future generation. I'm investigating the shame, the guilt that I've witnessed through my siblings and my parents and their struggles. And yet I feel like I was removed from that because I was the guy going out with the sword. I want to almost go back to when before I was even born, go into this dreamscape of what my dad was thinking of, what my mother was expecting, rearing children in this metropolis that's moving so fast even back then. I'm teaching my children little things that I learned in my apartment, in my mother's apartment, bringing them back out. The symbols, the handwritten letters, all this stuff that I excavated when my parents passed. I was like, your past is not going to pass with you. I'm the messenger of that. I'm the courier. I'm the messenger. Great art comes from very difficult places. I'm not so introverted about it anymore because I have a lot more to give, and yet I don't expect anything in return. I'm just wanting to give. Little did I know that 50 years ago, I was going to touch so many young souls, that they're there to experience these testimonials over time, these ageless conversations through painting and sculpture and photography, poetry. And it's wonderful to watch because it's watching the mechanics of my people. It's watching them celebrate with no shame and saying to themselves, you could join in or you could just watch from the sidelines and know that we're beautiful anyway. Pa'lante. Wake up. Eso!